Starting our recording. Okay, so it's official. We're welcome to our quarterly teleconference series. This is On the Move Synergy 2021. We're part of the Active Transportation Resource Center, and our intention for today, as it has been for our entire year, is to create connections with one another for the betterment of our individual efforts to support the Active Transportation Program and walking and bicycling across California. My name is Victoria Custodio, and I'm from the California Department of Public Health, the Active Transportation Safety Program, and I'll be one of the three facilitators for today. We have a great lineup of speakers who are going to kick us off and share their programmatic work from the last year, along with some wisdoms that were gained from a very, very hard year. So we're really looking forward to this session and having it be interactive. Next slide, please. But first, we want to make some quick logistical announcements for the best possible audio. We are encouraging everyone to use the call-in feature instead of calling in separately, which we know has happened in the past. These are some graphics. If you're not currently using your phone audio, now is a great time to get dialed in the webinar. There's time for you to work that out as we move forward. All right. All right, next slide, please. Okay, and this is just a little more about logistics for WebEx. It's, again, a reminder, it's best to use the phone call audio option. And please to keep your phone and computer muted unless you're speaking, and that helps to minimize the background noise. We are recording the session, and we will consider posting it after at the follow as we follow up with this session, so that folks can use it for future reference. And then finally, for questions or questions during the discussion portion of the meeting, we encourage you to use your chat function. And if need be, you can raise your hand and we can unmute your phone audio or computer audio so that you can speak. I believe we're going to, for our breakout room sessions, we're going to have everyone unmuted. So that way we really can have a nice flowing dialogue. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so just to give us a sense of the next hour and a half ahead, this is our agenda. I'm currently doing the welcome and teleconference overview, which includes this agenda. We're going to kick off our the meat of our teleconference today with an interview with San Luis Obispo, and Peter Williamson is going to give us some highlights from his ATP NI project that was delivered this past year. He's going to go over some highlights and accomplishments, really exciting stuff. After that, we're going to have a facilitated panelist conversation focused on challenges from this past year and then also looking ahead into 2022. So that conversation will involve Peter again from San Luis Obispo, as well as Miguel Vasquez from Riverside County, and then Sarah Sundquist from Shasta County. Following that, we'll have a peer sharing breakout session, which we really feel will be the heart of our teleconference today. This is where we'll ask you about what you've been working on, what challenges you've experienced. You can use that opportunity to troubleshoot with one another. And then we certainly want to end on that high note, looking ahead to 2022 and what really can what can we do well, and how can we support each other moving forward. And then after the breakout sessions, we'll come back and we'll just go over some few reminders of upcoming events that are happening, and then we'll wrap up for this series for the year. So packed agenda, very excited for what's about to ensue. So let's go on to the next slide, please. Okay, so this teleconference, as all of the ATRC on the Move series, is hosted by the Active Transportation Resource Center non-infrastructure team, which is managed by our Caltrans partners at the Division of Local Assistance Active Transportation Program. The managers for that program are Emily Abrahams and Summer Lopez. So we're always excited to have them join us for these sessions. And Summer, actually, we have Summer on the phone on the call today. She's going to help us with some of the facilitation later today. And then our team, the California Department of Public Health's Active Transportation Safety Program team, is comprised of three of us. And so, again, I'm Victoria Custodio, and I'm joined by my colleagues Marianne Hernandez, who's waving, and then Judy Polikoff, who is our WebEx facilitator today, and she is waving from behind her beautiful picture. But we won't have her video on just for today. Next slide, please. Okay, and then I mentioned very briefly, we have three featured presenters who really have been asked here to help kick off our teleconference today. So just a quick bio on each of them. Peter Williamson is from the San Luis Obispo Council of Government. He has supported transportation demand management programs and projects at SLOCOG for the past 7 years, and then he picked up Safe Routes to School for his region in 2019 for one normal walk to school day just before the pandemic. So Peter probably has not really known what this is, what it's like to work in Safe Routes to School outside of the pandemic. So bravo. We're going to learn a lot from him. He has his TDM CP, sorry, I don't know what that stands for, from the Association of Commuter Transportation, and loves trying to solve transportation problems of all types. So we welcome Peter. We also have Miguel Vasquez, and maybe Miguel, if you want to just turn on your video for a moment, we can see your face. Give everyone a wave. Miguel Vasquez is the Healthy Equity Urban and Regional Planner at Riverside University Health System Public Health. His professional experience spans over two decades. In his current role, he works on advancing the integration of public health and equity into city and regional planning. Hello, Miguel. And then finally, I want to introduce Sarah Sundquist, who is with the Shasta County Health and Human Services Agency. She is a community education specialist and serving in the public health branch. She has been involved with Safe Routes to School and ATP for a number of years. She also is a league certified instructor through the League of American Bicyclists, and she currently serves as the Healthy Shasta Partnership Coordinator. For those of you who aren't familiar with Healthy Shasta, it's a community collaborative to address childhood obesity through encouraging healthy eating and physical activity. So really grateful to our speakers for joining us today. And the next slide, I think actually, Marianne, gets us started. So just as a little background before Marianne jumps in, we do have a series of questions that we posed to our speakers, and so we're working off a little bit of a script, but we also envision going a little off script so that we can have a little more of an organic conversation through all of this. So take it away, Marianne.
Hello, everyone, and especially Peter. You can hear us okay?
Hello, hello.
Hi. So let's get right into it. Peter, I had the honor of interviewing Peter earlier this year, and I was just amazed at all he got done, given that most of the year last year was a pandemic, or this year. We're still in the year. Would you give us a summary of your project, where you're located, who is the primary audience for your ATP&I project, and what types of activities you conducted this past year? Go ahead, Peter. I'm going to mute and turn it over to you, and he'll probably share a few photos as well.
Thanks, Marianne. Hi, everyone. So I live in San Luis Obispo County. It's about 283,000 residents, 3,600 square miles roughly, so a fairly rural area. I have a pretty unique background coming into Safe Routes to School in terms of that I was a homeschooler. So I don't know what that lends. I get to ask a lot of questions and be ignorant across the board when I'm trying to get to, hey, what's up with this and this at a certain school. And so that's kind of nice. In terms of biking, been doing that my whole life. I remember the first time I got on a bike and ran into a redwood tree in Humboldt County, and tried not to do that again. It's cool though, because our on-bike education program, I got to work with a kid at one of our target schools, and I'll get to that in a second, but getting him on his bike for the first time, and he did not crash into anything, thank goodness. I was very worried about that, and the audible wee wee as he rolled around this course here. I don't know, he wasn't on the course technically, but on the blacktop was very gratifying. And I know that is the essence of what we're all after at the end of the day. Those moments where an elementary school kid gets to get on a bike for the first time and you get to be involved with that. So yes, we've all heard that saying about lemons, and that was certainly the pandemic. We did a great walk to school day, the one that was normal, with like 81% plus of schools participating. We found some unique ways to engage schools that hadn't been participating in the past, and basically almost tripled the number of schools that were rolling that year. But then the pandemic hit, and we had our contractor kind of like, what are we doing? We kind of put together this tool on Social Pinpoint to capture some information from some mapped information from students, kind of like a walk bike audit. And initially it wasn't super successful. I think right at the beginning of the pandemic, there wasn't like, people were like, I don't know. And so people weren't doing anything. But as we hit the fall and towards the next walk to school day, we were able to get our schools engaged through virtual programming for walk to school day. And we grabbed 100% of our K through 12 public schools, and through their PE programs, we're able to deliver some bike and pedestrian education on that day. And I think the timing was just perfect. All of the principals were super accessible during that time. It was also when we were applying for our Cycle 5 non-infrastructure grants, we were able to get a letter of support from every single principal, and that's just telling that there was like a weird niche. So something, it's kind of like the stock market. There was that moment when you should have invested. This was the moment, hopefully, that you were engaging. And if another moment rolls around, be ready to hit it, because that's great. The letters of support from over 68 schools is awesome. And then the PE program, so that's, again, 68 schools plus with the PE programs confirming that they would do this education component for that day. And it was a huge success for virtual Walk to School Day. We also partnered with food services for the first time, so another new, unique partnership of gathering the food services contacts and getting flyers out about that event to a population that we would typically not reach. And I think that had a lot of value. And then we also had something going on the other side of things called Pavement to Parks. And that was a partnership. Everybody's seen these parklets popping up in their community out of necessity to continue restaurant business or haircuts, this sort of thing. And we had this cool scan a QR code kind of concept. So took that and brought it forward to Bike to School Day this past May. So we're almost caught up here. And we were able to get 81% of schools placing a sign. And in some cases, kind of a unique opportunity here was, rather than it being bike to the school or walk to the school, to scan the QR code, we were able to have the families could go to a park closer to their home. So schools that aren't accessible to, we have one called Los Ranchos Elementary, and it's probably like 4 miles away from the majority of families. So they go to a local park instead. So I'm going to share my screen because I'm talking a lot, but I could just be sharing a screen and sharing these thousands of words that the pictures are valued at. So this, is kind of a look at the audit tool that we used for that virtual walk to school day. And I kind of skipped over the takeaway from those PE classes was, hey, your assignment is to go out and look at a bus stop or look at a sidewalk section and complete an audit. And so we mapped throughout our county. You can see it's kind of all over, really central and slow like normal, but, with the North Coast, we even had one way out in East County, and this kind of comments coming through. We were able to give away some bikes. That was sort of another opportunity, which was awesome. That we talked to Caltrans and said, hey, our local match, is that something that we can use to give away some bikes? So obviously that bike incentive is nice, and we received over 600 comments to that, which was awesome. Another shout out to cycle tracks, just because that's an opportunity when kids aren't at school. If you do cycle tracks, we paint them and get them implemented through our Cycle 3 funding. So just a shout out to that as I go. I'll get to this in a second. This is the Bike There event that I was just talking about. So you'd bike to your school, scan that QR code, and you'd be entered. Again, we were able to do bike giveaways for this, and this would be like an example of a park near a school as the kind of the placeholder. And so we got a lot of families scanning these. This is a middle school entrance here. So that was awesome just to see so many kids participate in that. And then with the virtual learning experience, we didn't have an education coordinator for our on-bike education programs. That's a problem. And then also, since it's on-bike kinesthetic learning, that's also a problem. So thankfully, they hired somebody with a background in sort of virtual education for like environment type topics. And that individual has created a hybrid curriculum as well as a virtual curriculum, so we can deliver our on-bike education whether or not a school will allow a contractor or consultant to show up in person. This is the more recent walk to school day where things started to become a little bit more normal. Shout out to our to the north, the TAMC kind of inspired this concept of the walking school bus map. So you've probably seen something like this, but these were led routes and meetup locations along with like park and walk suggestions as well. So that was more recently. We had over 80% again. I think it was up from 2019, and then the number of kids walking and biking was definitely up. But, you know, by over 1,000 kids so far, and there's still some numbers that we're collecting, so that should be even higher. This was more recently an on-bike education event that we did at Los Ranchos Elementary. So the in-person stuff has been allowed, which is pretty nice. And that's been pretty successful. This is a quick little video. We'll see if you can hear it. A lot of words, but this is kind of the on-bike. So you've probably seen this other areas do something similar. There you go. Gotta love the GoPro. So yeah, that's a quick summary. There's been a lot happening, that's for sure. And I'd say there are a lot of opportunities that never expected going into this whole thing, and thankfully we were able to embrace that.
Hi, Peter. It's just amazing that the PE instructors were so open. So that's definitely a new sort of audience or new partner in getting the word out. And I love that they the assignment was to do a bike, walk, or transit audit. That's wonderful, and I love that. And so I'm kind of curious how the elementary schools went about submitting that assignment to their PE teachers.
Yeah, that's a great question. It was mostly a recommended assignment, so we didn't put a hard requirement on it. I think there were a couple of schools. I can't remember an elementary school that might have done it. A high school certainly did it, and they got super engaged. But saying like, this is an assignment, you need to do it, or just, hey, this is a recommended assignment that where you have a chance to win a bike. And obviously with the chance to win a bike, it was enough to get the families involved. And so, you know, it was very much with the flyers and stuff that we were putting out. And we used Peach Jar to send out flyers as well, which is kind of the virtual flyer send for certain school districts in California. And that, you know, it drummed up some interest with the families. And, you know, the fact that we were able to get comments throughout the county, even our East County, which is super rural, definitely speaks to the success of that tool. We have a few different ways to capture data. So we were going to do the family survey, which we have now, which would be more of your typical Survey Monkey questionnaire. You know, how do you typically get to school? Are you within a half a mile? This sort of thing. What programs make a difference? That's what we're doing now instead of then. And then we were like, well, I was like, this is an opportunity to do a walk bike audit. And then the third component we still need to put together, maybe in a future cycle or out of cycle, which would be the teacher survey. And I'd be curious in the breakout rooms if anybody has experience with that. Teacher doing a poll by hands.
And Peter, you did mention doing your counts and that you actually used a counter. I know we often get questions about counts, how to do counts before and after counts, but you said to get a more accurate count, you started using counters. Is that correct?
Yeah, so with this walk to school day that we just had, along with the map for a specific school, we're hoping to do like 2 to 3 maps for each of the campaign days so that we can slowly grow a database of these interactive maps for marketing. But we also added counters, so they're just branded Safe Routes to School, or I think they're branded Walk to School Day, and just old school click counters to all the schools. It's more of a reminder to count because it does get forgotten a lot of times, or the schools will use the snacks, the giveaways. I'm like, well, we gave away everything, so you gave us 90 things. There must have been 90 kids, but there might have been another 10, but I mean, for all we know, it might have been another 20. So I would say like 30 to 40% of the schools so far will definitely use the counters and took a picture of the counters. So those are accurate counts, and that's something that we track in our customer relationship management platform per the school. It's like, what was the count last time? What's the benchmark count? And so I think it's a good idea to include that type of reminder, and for the cost of the click counters, it's definitely worth it.
Great. Yes. Good tip. Now, Peter mentioned several, the curriculum and Bitmoji, what the PE teachers use. So we're going to put it in the chat, as well as it will be included in our resource document that we'll post on the ATPRC website.
Yeah, I actually didn't mention the Bitmoji. That's a big component of the virtual education. So we equipped the PE teachers with these Bitmoji classrooms. That was one of the food services directors at a district saying, hey, did you know about this Bitmoji? Bit what? So we created these classroom environments for both the last Walk to School Day, so Walk to School Day 2020, and Bike to School Day 2021. And the PE teachers were able to use those resources. It also helped shape the virtual aspect of the bike pedestrian education program that we deliver.
And then, Peter, I have one more point. We have about a minute, but I want you to, asking you to look back on 2021, this year. What would you describe as the major highlight or accomplishment? And you can have more than one.
The major accomplishment was getting 100% of the schools engaged when we, in the past have only had 30% of schools engaged. So that was a huge mile marker, having every principal rally behind every public school principal rally. We have some public and charter schools too, but that was the biggest one, I would say. And getting all of them to submit a letter of support was kind of a big deal too. So I feel very proud of those, but all of it's been positive when it could have been negative. I mean, there were some scares with the contractor not having a lot of insight to like, ooh, how can you deliver? I mean, we have this contract with you, and so how do we make this work? It's kind of scary. But.
And I do want to add that Peter was able to reach all the schools, 69 schools, working through the superintendent. So I know that's not possible for all school districts, but that helps bring everybody in, and the principals feel, okay, if the superintendent says it, we're going to do it. So I'm going to go ahead and let Victoria take over just so we stay on time, and then we'll have Peter in later again. So if you have questions, you can ask them then. I'm going to.
Okay, and can I get a thumbs up? Can you guys hear me at this point? Thank you, Peter. I appreciate that. All right. Thank you so much, Peter and Marianne, for kicking off this dialogue, and for Peter for giving us all great examples of what an ATP NI awardee was able to accomplish this past year. Marianne, could you put the next slide on, please? At this point, I'm going to invite our 2 other panelists, Sarah and Miguel, to turn on their cameras and also join us in this conversation, so that we can now move our discussion to challenges, solutions, and looking ahead to 2022. So just as a framing, each panelist will speak to the most pressing challenges, wisdoms gained, and tips and tools that they found beneficial to keep their active transportation project work going in the face of uncertainty and competing local priorities. Peter is going to join in for this, but we're going to spend a little more time with Sarah and Miguel during the first part of this 30-minute conversation, so they can weigh in on what's been happening in the north part of the state and the south part of the state. That said, Sarah, I'm going to start with you. We are aware that you've been doing a lot of great work up in Shasta throughout the pandemic as well, as part of the Healthy Shasta Collaborative. A lot of your colleagues are on the call today, so we appreciate their participation as well. Can you give us a brief overview of what that work entailed, and then talk about the biggest challenges you faced, and then move into the solutions that you came up with and any tips and tools that were most helpful to your work?
Sure. Good morning. Thank you for asking me to speak today. So I coordinate the Healthy.
Sarah, sorry to interrupt. I'm just going to give Marianne a prompt. Thank you. Perfect. Go ahead, Sarah. Okay. Sorry to.
So I coordinate the Healthy Shasta Partnership, which focuses on promoting healthy lifestyles, mainly through increased physical activity and improving nutrition. And as Victoria, when she introduced me, the Healthy Shasta Partnership was kind of born in 2005 as a response to the obesity epidemic. And we have 24 different organizations that have come together to put kind of health as a priority in our community. And they range from nonprofit organizations to education sectors, our local hospital. And it's a combination of private funding as well as funding from public health, which mainly that public health money pays my salary and a few other staff that are working on specific Healthy Shasta initiatives. So, of course, like many of you, we couldn't do a lot of the in-person activities as we had done in the past. So we switched to virtual, and I'll just share about two of our successful initiatives over the past year. So in January, we launched and bolstered our Healthy Shasta Walks Passport. And I don't know if the slide is up right now with that passport. Yeah. And so it just is 25 different walks or suggested walks that people could take. And we wanted to make it very easy and accessible for people. So it ranged from walking to your mailbox to walking to get groceries, or substituting a walk to a place that you usually drive to. We also wanted these not to be super specific so that people in our rural communities could participate without coming down the hill to Reading to do all the walks. And people really liked this. Even though they're very easy, it just prompted people to think in a different way about walking and walking for transportation. So if people turned in their passport, they were eligible for socks and other prizes. There were 25 walks, but you only had to do 10 of them and turn in your passport. So we had over 200 people turn in their passports. We know more people participated that just didn't turn them in. So that was successful. And then we really target this Walks Passport and all of our initiatives really to women or the busy working moms from about 30 to 50. And we know that if they are healthy and active, often they bring their families in to be healthy and active. And so we did have several reports of families participating in the passport together, which is really fun. And then for our Bike Month, our second activity or initiative that I want to talk about, we couldn't do a lot of our social rides and activities that we've done in the past. So we decided to kind of make a bigger splash by partnering with Pedigo electric bikes. There's a shop in our community to do a bike giveaway. And we had an application process where we actually received 66 different applications from people that wanted this e-bike. So we promoted it as the Great Bike Giveaway. We tried to reach out to low-income populations, but also just our whole community. We did ask a series of questions, but we tried to make the application pretty simple. We translated it into Spanish. And so we felt like it was really successful to get 66 applicants. Well, we had a work group that chose Joseph, our winning contestant, because he really needed a bike. He was getting around on our public bus system, which often took him hours a day. And he was able to just tell a really good story in his application about why he needed the bike. So through this, we did a little blog on him to tell his story throughout Bike Month, and that's how we promoted Bike Month through his blog and through this e-bike giveaway. So you can find out more at shastabikechallenge.org, and it has a little tab at the top that has his blog and his story. But just a couple of examples that he was able to eat access to healthier food. He was diabetic, and he would often just go to convenience stores to get food that he needed, but he was also able to access healthier food. He was able to look for employment, to go to doctor's appointments, to spend more time with his son, who also got a bike, not through this, but through something that his dad was able to buy him. So there were a lot of great benefits for him getting this bike. It was very transformative for him.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Oh, Sarah, I was gonna, just because I was going to ask you to share what your greatest takeaways and lessons learned were from this work. I really appreciate how personal these programs have, how they appealed to the personal side, the mothers traveling with children, and really, hearing the stories from individual residents from your area. What are your big takeaways and greatest lessons learned from the work from this past year?
Okay, with the passport, we really wanted people to get access to it in a lot of different ways. We know not everyone has a smartphone, not everyone uses a computer. So we did drop off a lot of passports at coffee shops and different places, but people weren't frequenting those places. So to kind of double up on our campaign for walking, we printed these passports in full-size page ads in a number of different popular publications around town. So we, just an example, our city rec guide printed the passport, and people could just tear it out, put it on the refrigerator. It would remind them to take those frequent walks. So we had a number of people submit it that way by just sending it in or dropping it off, but we also had a lot of people that participated digitally as well. And then with the e-bike, we were just going to give out a bike for Bike Month. And then we thought, you know what, let's make a bigger splash and try to give out an e-bike. I think that would really, highlight Bike Month a little bit more. And we really learned a lot that e-bikes really can be transformative, and for anyone, really, even if you're a good, strong rider. Reading is hilly, it's hot, it's very spread out. And so e-bikes can serve a lot of people in a lot of different ways. And that was eye-opening to us. And it was a really great way to get people to think about biking differently in our community.
Great. Thank you so much, Sarah. At this point, I'm going to actually bring Miguel into the conversation. Miguel, you there? Okay.
Hello.
Hello. Okay, and let me give me a second while I bring up some images that Miguel shared with us earlier to highlight some of the work that he's been doing. But let me ask you the question. Okay, so you're Miguel, like Sarah, are based at a local public health department. You're a planner, and your position at the Riverside Public Health Department is focused on advancing health equity in active transportation and in planning in general. So can you, with that focus, can you talk about the challenges and workarounds that you've had to manage this past year? And as needed, please let me know when I can scroll through some of these images that you shared with us.
Of course. Thank you so much, Victoria, for this opportunity to share with this group about a little bit about our experience with the active transportation program. As you mentioned, I am a planner by training, but the person who you really wanted here today was Valerie Guerrero, who is one of our health education coordinators who manages the program. She is right now doing a walk audit, and that's the reason why she wasn't able to be here. My involvement is on the tangents, if you will, with the project, so I participate on and off. So last year during the pandemic, well, I should say that before that, we've been implementing ATP programs throughout the county for over 10 years. In over 10 years, we have acquired, I would say, a pretty solid expertise on how to do our work for promoting safe walking, biking, and also obviously how people driving on the road should also acknowledge other people moving throughout the street. But last year during the pandemic, we we really came to a halt, as probably you all did, because of the fact that we couldn't come in person. Coming in person, being present with the community is probably at the heart of the active transportation programming. So we had to quickly figure out ways to continue to deliver what is written in our deliverables for grants. And we were able to come up with a number of things that I think I would say can be considered innovative for us, because we've never done this sort of thing before, meaning that we had to think quick and come up with ways to continue to engage our community. So a couple of things that I'll mention similarly to what Peter shared. Our team also was able to develop a middle school pedestrian bike safety curriculum that was integrated into the PE classes for some of the schools that we were serving. And the second thing, similarly to what Peter said, was to figure out ways to go virtual, obviously through Zoom, and also using the loan signs that Peter mentioned. We also did something similar, but in this case, our QR code directed the community along this particular corridor to respond to a survey. And we use this tool called Mentimeter. And that was a pretty, I would say, effective way to get the word out when we were on a lockdown. I mean, that's when that happened. We just couldn't physically go to the community. We couldn't really knock on people's doors. We had to really be hands off. So we were, I would say, at the mercy of whether people would be walking by the street and seeing our signs or not. And we did receive some feedback as a result of that. And I would also mention that here in Riverside County, we're members of SCAG, which is the Southern California Association of Governments, which has an amazing campaign called Go Human. And through that, they actually started this idea of using the loan signs to promote the campaign. And that's how we were able to also, I would say, replicate that idea with these loan signs in bilingual signs in English and Spanish. And we think that this can be a technique that we will be using moving forward with, now that we know what the pitfalls are, we can recalibrate and use it more effectively.
Great, Miguel. I know it's just a great reminder. All of our communities throughout California have different starting places with this work. Sarah mentioned that not everyone has adopted some of these technologies, and so but being able to get that technology for your own community's use and starting out with it in I think it's a huge win, and then growing it from there I think is a real opportunity as we look ahead. So thank you for sharing. Did you quickly want to go through any of these photos? Did you want to so we're showing the lawn signs here. Did you also want to comment on some of this work that you did in partnership with the school districts?
Yeah, I think the picture on my right was part of an effort to do a crosswalk repaint for Lake Elsinore. So we engaged also in that in that activity. Let's see, if you scroll the images, you see what's down below. Oh, the other important thing that we did was to actually shift to taking the advantage of the grab and go lunches. So during that time, actually, grab and go starts early in the day for some schools, and then later on for for the lunchtime hours. I think there's a period of time in which we were able to secure space, so as parents were driving to grab their lunches, we were able to also promote the program and provide goodies, if you will, that relate to our program. So that way we maintain our connection with the community in our presence, and that was just an amazing opportunity, because if the
Great.
district didn't have that, how do you do it, on your own?
True partners in this work were our nutrition partners. So thank you for reinforcing that fact. Peter, I'm going to ask you this question. You shared a lot earlier about the work that you did. One of the things that Marianne had learned when she interviewed you was your work that you did with school communities that don't actually have the safest infrastructure in place. Can you speak to how you were able to work around that challenge and engage those schools?
Yeah, definitely. It's been on my mind since I picked up the program that there are a lot of schools in our rural region that are just terrible locations for the families that attend to do bike or walk. But it's still important that those kids appreciate the walk and bike messaging. And so even on the normal walk to school day, I had coordinated something with our contractor to go out to a school that typically wouldn't participate to do a walk and bike audit. So that was kind of the early phase of what came later. And by engaging the PE instructors, I was just like, how do we do something for walk to school day? Maybe we go the PE route, because we partner with some PE teachers at that point. We'd partnered with a few for the on-bike education, so that seemed like a good avenue. And so for the campaigns, the virtual one, obviously all schools could participate in, because the assignment could take place in the family's neighborhood rather than at the school or within a half mile of the school like typical. The map was cool in that it did include the highlight of the half mile area to try and prompt the idea that area is where we want comments, but not specifically saying that. And so placing signs for the bike there was another thing that we coordinated with several principals to say, like, where are all of your families? Oh, okay, so most of them are up in this neighborhood completely away from your school. So then we would connect with the jurisdiction to say, hey, this park is really close by a bunch of these, and had to do an encroachment permit of some sort to get those signs placed at the park. And then the school would promote that alternative location to go to for the Bike There campaign. So kind of the walk and bike audit, or even the on-bike education, where you're utilizing PE time, doing the cycle tracks. You can create the opportunity for walk and bike education and encouragement. And so it's just been on my mind for sure, that the only way to make an impact to the future, running the employer program, you hit a wall with a huge percentage where they're going to drive. And so how can you help the next generation at least appreciate that there are other ideas out there? And trying to get out to every school for these sort of things has been important for me.
For sure. That's great. And I think you might have some resources on that too that you can share with us, right? Out following this teleconference. Okay, so wonderful. Thank you all for those thoughtful responses to describe the challenges from this past year. You all were able to adapt so well, and I think that is just so edifying. So our next question is about looking forward into the next year, 2022. What are you looking forward to most about in your active transportation work next year? So Peter, just a short, no more than 2-minute response, what you're really looking forward to.
Sorry. Looking ahead, definitely hoping to carry this momentum and having hopefully things get more normal, right? But seeing the on-bike education finally roll out is a big relief, and then also getting these cycle tracks rolled out is exciting. We usually do the cycle tracks in-house, and so this time we hired a consultant to do the design. And that's a pretty simple process, but I mean, I am excited to get this done because it's part of our Cycle 3 grant, deliverables. And so that's a good one. And then having the education coordinator and getting out to do these on-bike education things. It was fun to go out to the one that they just did at the elementary school in Los Osos and to get some GoPro footage of that was pretty cool. So I'm hoping to do some more of that, kind of marketing captures, have more moments like helping a kid ride their bike for the first time, just for my life. That's a really good thing.
Love it. Perfect. All right, Miguel, for you, same question. What are you looking most forward to in your work, active transportation work for 2022?
Yeah, so as you mentioned earlier, one of the pieces that we're centering on is equity. One of the things that we've done, I would say, in the past 2 years, it has been evolving and is changing our name for the program. We used to be Safe Routes to Schools, and now we're branding ourselves. We have branded ourselves as Safe Routes for All. And what this means is that we are increasingly looking for opportunities to be more inclusive and more engaging. So through that lens, we are including a couple aspects into our programming moving forward, which is the idea of safe routes to parks and also safe routes for homelessness or for homeless. We believe that there's these opportunities that we haven't really addressed in the past where there's needs to increase our education and improve our safety when it comes to these sort of aspects. So those are some of the things that we're looking forward to do. And to do that, I think our community engagement piece, we're hoping to strengthen that because community engagement is really the most difficult aspect of this work. It is impossible to bring all the students or all the people in a city to know about active transportation. So fostering and strengthening our relationships with local community-based organizations is going to be really important for us moving forward, particularly when we begin to implement our program in the city of Coachella. And I'm mentioning the city of Coachella because there's a number of CBOs that are ready to get engaged in this type of work. And I think when we were discussing in preparation for this conversation today is the role or the potential to engage the promotoras, which is basically community health promoters that operate in this particular community. So that is one of the, I think, pieces that I'm most excited about.
For sure. Thank you. I'm looking forward to hearing how your work rolls out in 2022 for that reason. I think it's a major priority for the state, and all of the priority populations that you named are really essential, and groups to work with are essential. Sarah, for you, what do you have in store for 2022?
Okay, we're going to be continuing our walking initiative. Walking is just really an accessible way to get people out active and improve their health. We have plans to host a speaker from California Walks. We really want them to focus on how a walkable community creates a vibrant community, and walking can be very good for the economy. So helping us with that message to our Healthy Shasta partners. We will also launch our passport at that time and continue that program. And then we have Walktober that we do every October. It's a walking challenge, and we try to get as many workplaces involved as possible to do a friendly competition amongst their workplace employees, as well as competing with other workplaces in the county. And we award the winning team with $1,000 to donate to the nonprofit of their choice in our county. So it's kind of a fun way to also engage some of those nonprofits. They could also be up for winning those funds. And then we also look forward to conducting a few public workshops for ATP to prepare ourselves for the next round or cycle of ATP and get the public's ideas on future projects. And then our bike month, we're going to be continuing that and our challenge. We use the Love to Ride platform, which is part of the National Bike Month challenge, and which our community is a part of. And Love to Ride is a really great platform to kind of find where your team is statistic-wise. It engages individuals to use it to do kind of social media with pictures and different things, and it's a great way to just kind of show your progress throughout the month of May as you ride and compete with other individuals and teams.
Perfect. And Sarah mentioned a number of different platforms that are out there that are very user friendly, and we'll be sure to include those resources in the follow-up communications from this teleconference. Thank you guys for sharing kind of what you're looking ahead to doing in 2022. And this is the last question for this panel conversation before we switch to our breakout groups. Although let me preface that by saying we are going to spend a little time answering some questions that are coming in from the chat. Right now I see one, so I think we definitely can handle that. If folks want to ask more questions of the panelists before we go into group breakouts, I encourage you to put your questions into the chat right now. But let's shift to our final question, which is about a wish list. It's like it's a 2022 wish list, or maybe beyond. If there was one thing you could ask for to help support your local active transportation work, what would that be? And Sarah, I'll have you start us off with just your quick response to what do you really wish for this work?
Sure. So more flexibility with funding from the ATP guidance would be really a great help. As Victoria mentioned, we use a few different platforms, Move Spring for our walking challenge and Love to Ride for our biking challenge. And I think it would be really great if that could be included as allowable expenses in the ATP guidance. In the near future, we're going to be working with our public works departments through the county and the city of Reading, who were awarded ATP funds, and we are going to be collaborating with them on the non-infrastructure piece. And sometimes it's difficult for two large organizations to kind of figure out how to work together with their timelines and contracts. And we think it would be really helpful to have assistance and templates from the Active Transportation Resource Center on how to help our organizations stay organized and on track with all of our ATP requirements. So that was two.
Love it, and we're listening. We definitely hear you, Sarah. So thank you for those for making those wishes known. I think we can work on that. Miguel, your turn. What's on your wish list to support your active transportation work locally?
Well, funding, but not funding just for the sake of funding. What I mean by that is that perhaps there should be a way to have a separate pot of funding for schools that completed, and in this case, I'm focusing on schools, for schools that completed engagement with active transportation. Because once the coordinators or the jurisdictions that help guide these programs, once we leave, then sometimes there is no way to continue for the schools to promote or messaging and I would say to keep the kinds of things that we left behind alive. I think when we complete a project, we really leave a legacy. But if there's no funding to continue to implement that legacy, things over time may dissipate, and we may have to go for additional funding, I don't know, 10 years into the future, but it would make sense to make an investment for the long run after the non-infrastructure programs are completed. So that's my wish.
That's great, Miguel, and I think it's really, I think that's going to resonate for a number of different communities throughout California. It's how do we sustain these efforts after the seed has been planted with ATP non-infrastructure funds, and I think that's given us a lot to, share out in 2022 as part of our next series. I think we can be a little more deliberate and uphold the models that really help with that sustainability. Appreciate that sentiment. Okay, Peter, you have the last word here. What's on your wish list for 2022?
I have so many wish list items, but yes, I mean
For
it's
active
always funding.
transportation.
It's the first one for the same as everybody. It's the funding. It's hard to compete with our region. I mean, what a problem. We don't have a lot of disadvantaged community,
You're lucky.
in the applications, and so that's a great problem, right? But then it's hard to get the funding, and then trying to figure out a way for the agency to our agency to put money forth for continuing a lot of these activities, stuff that has existed, or even pioneering new stuff, or building a pilot that might have a better chance at getting funded in the future. That can be challenging, and so there's a lot of unknowns. So my wish list is to make those unknowns a little bit more known, and I don't know that that's a problem that ATRC can take on. But I mean, whenever I've reached out and needed resources, that has been there. So I think that it's a really great program, and that I know who to contact when I need help with certain things. The contractor has a lot in their wheelhouse. They've had experience in past cycles, and so that's helpful. But when they do ask a question, a lot of times I'm like, let's forward that question along, because I was homeschooled, and that's always my excuse.
Well, and I appreciate you, reiterating the idea of like funding, and just a plug for some of our previous work. We did do a funding webinar that featured planning funding opportunities. So that doesn't necessarily fund the non-infrastructure activities, but it does kind of, create an opportunity for additional planning for communities that have yet to be served. And so there is, some ways of, growing programs through those Caltrans planning funds. And then, of course, at the state level, we have the Office of Traffic Safety. And so we featured their annual funding call too. And we know a lot of ATP awardees have been able to diversify their funding using that safety money, which I think is a nice, way to go, especially, if you're looking to sustain your work and, and how through data-driven efforts. So we can circulate that back out to everyone. But we hear you. I want to just say from the ATRC, we're definitely, hearing this conversation, and it does help us as we move into 2022, figure out what, how we really need to strategize our own resource development so that we're most supportive of you guys. So on that note, I want to just thank everyone for this part of the teleconference, and I'm going to actually take one question, pose one question to everyone right now, and that's coming in from Rachel Paris. Thank you, Rachel, for your question, and it's really for any of you. Which activities were created due to community input? And I feel like that can go to anyone, but I'm pretty sure Sarah can be able to answer some of that based on how they're set up in Shasta.
Sure. So I don't know if if it would really say that it was community input that started it, but I think the community really responded well to the passport, which is why we decided to run it again and why we're going to do it one more time. At least it just seemed like as far as challenges go, sometimes we're on the mindset of, oh, we got to make it really challenging. But this walks passport, I think the beauty was in the simplicity of it, and people could really do these things, and it was achievable, and it was really everyday walks that you could do. But just the fact that maybe prompted people to remind them that they could walk. And then I think also the e-bike giveaway was something that the community really responded to. We really found out how much of a need there was for people to have that type of transportation in our community. As I mentioned, our public bus system is not very good, and people spend hours riding, and really an e-bike could easily take the place of that for many people.
Great. Okay, and Peter, did you want to also speak to that question?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of referee survey points. If you have a 3-year funding cycle, which I think our last is cycle 2 and cycle 3 are about 3 years, then that's 1 year for each of those methods. So the family survey was the one in past cycles that helped create the current cycle 3, application and deliverables. So it's sort of based on the feedback of families. A lot of times we end up, I end up kind of pursuing where there's a lot of interest. So creating like that walkability, bikeability map. There were a lot of parents saying, we want to, up the game for this upcoming walk to school day event and make that a bigger deal. We always get feedback that the events, the walk and bike to school day encouragement events are probably the number one thing that really makes a difference. And so that, I think, whereas like we need to make sure we try to maximize the impact of that with all of the different schools. So it's kind of an underlying feature, but building in those surveys, I think, is a really smart idea. For every 3 years, you're doing one of each of those, and that can help guide your next 3 years. And that's kind of the strategy, at least, that I keep in mind. Could it be better? Could it reach certain communities that it's not reaching? Definitely. And with our current family survey that we're about to put out, we've upgraded our survey monkey, so it's the same for putting in Spanish. If someone responds in Spanish, it shows up in the same results as an English survey. And a lot of times, having 2 separate surveys, you lose that input. And so I think there's some considerations that weren't a part of cycle 2 that are a part of cycle 3 that could help with whatever is after the current cycle. Yes, I can share the link to the current one that we don't have responses for, and you can give it a pilot run.
Yeah, that sounds great. And we'll get. I think if there are other surveys that are out there that folks want to share, we can also pull those and get those out to people. I think finding those assessment tools that have already been vetted or developed and vetted is a really nice resource to have, and we would love to facilitate the sharing of those. Miguel, did you want to weigh in on the question from Rachel? Which activities were created due to community input?
Sure. Yeah, I wish I could say that I have one single example in which, community groups said, hey, why don't you do this or that? Our program is informed by everything we see, everything we hear when we go out into the community. And similarly to what Peter said, our programming is informed based on surveys that we do when we begin to assemble our applications for grants. So in a sense, it's not necessarily a direct idea that comes from the community, but is what we do is based on the general content of what we experience as we deliver and as we research or potential strategy for the communities that we serve. So I know it's a nebulous answer, but all of that feedback that we take comes out when we meet together and we brainstorm and we say, okay, so what do we do? I guess occasionally maybe some staff members may just come up with a brilliant idea on their own, but I think by far all of our ideas are informed by what we hear from the community.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you, Rachel, for that question. And just to keep us moving along, I think we're going to move to the next section of our teleconference. And Marianne, if you would be so kind as to put on the next slide, which is the peer sharing session and breakout room discussion instructions. Perfect. So we're going to have about 15 minutes, maybe a little bit longer if I can get through this slide really quickly, for our smaller group discussion. So please stay on the call so we can engage you in those group sessions. You're going to be assigned to a breakout room with a facilitator, and the 3 are going to be myself, Mary Ann, and Summer Lopez from Caltrans. This will be your time to share and learn from one another, and so the framing that we want to encourage is really to pick from like the themes of accomplishments, challenges, tips and tools, and future plans and wishes. Please share, what you can, but recognize that our time is somewhat limited, so you want to make sure that other people can also weigh in. And then lastly, as we can, our ATRC team is taking notes, and we'll summarize those notes for attendees in follow up to this teleconference. Lots has already been shared, but we know that there's even more forthcoming from all of you who are participating. And then at the end of the breakouts, you're going to be routed back to the main room, and then we'll wrap up the teleconference from there with just a few reminders of some upcoming events that you don't, one in particular, events that you don't want to miss. So, all right, Judy, this is the test of our technology. You ready to put us in some
Here
rooms?
we go, everyone.
Let's do it.
Yep, we're going into rooms. All right.
All right. See you back.
Victoria, you're muted. There you go.
Perfect. Sorry about that. Thanks. Just love WebEx. So, all right, you guys, thanks for participating. We had a really nice discussion in our breakout group. I'm assuming that the same happened in the other one. So as stated earlier, we're going to write up our notes and kind of share some of our takeaways, and then we are certainly going to be using it at the ATRC to think about how we are going to best strategize for next year. So so just a few announcements. We're coming to a close. We did want to remind everyone that the guideline development workshops for ATP Cycle 6 have started. So there was a kickoff last week. For each cycle, the California Transportation Commission has a series of public engagement workshops where they want to hear from local communities, regions about the guidelines, and should things kind of stay as is, or or could there be small tweaks here and there. To the same extent, there are workshops that focus on how to successfully or comprehensively complete the program PSR equivalent. I'm sorry, I keep on forgetting what that acronym is, Summer. But the scoping scope of work documents for both infrastructure and non-infrastructure will be covered in another workshop. And then there's going to be workshops for input to the application and scoring rubrics. I believe what was shared at the kickoff meeting is that the CTC is also planning to do some workshops in parts of the state that have requested. I think they're all still virtual, but I believe that they're doing some regional workshops where I think there's more built-in Q&A about the program itself, and so I'm guessing that might have to do with certain parts of the state not being as well. Not competing as well for these investments. So if you go onto the CTC's website and their active transportation program page, and then click down on their ATP Cycle 6 tab, you'll get the save the date for the upcoming workshops. And then what the CTC does is before each workshop, they'll post the specifics, the login information, and the agenda about what's going to be covered. So we really encourage non-infrastructure awardees to participate in those and make sure that that CTC is hearing what your input is for the cycle that's about to be funded, and there will be a call for projects in March 2022. Next slide, please. Okay. Just as a reminder, let's go back to the runaway slides. Just as a reminder, we have a team of 3 at CDPH who serves as part of the non-infrastructure technical assistance team. We've done some reassignments of our own, and at this point, you'll see how each of us has different districts that we're serving as the main liaison to. So we encourage you to reach out to us for questions, for sharing. If there's any ideas that you're brainstorming for cycle 6 or just, your current projects, please reach out to us. We always love hearing from you. And then just so you know, we are also doing active outreach to all of the active projects still. So you should be hearing from us if you haven't already. Next slide, please. Okay, so that wraps up this teleconference where we've got about a minute left. I want to first thank you to our speakers. Peter, I don't see you right now, but I'm thinking you're still there. And of course, Sarah, who I do see. Hi, Peter, I see you. And Miguel, really appreciate you joining us on this journey, sharing your work and encouraging us to do better. We learn from you and we applaud all of your work. So thank you for sharing today. I want to let folks know that we're going to take a little hiatus with our webinars and teleconferences, but we're going to resume again in February of 2022. And as our first perspectives webinar, which is where we feature different perspectives that create the active transportation community. We're going to have a wonderful speaker who is going to talk about e-bikes, and this is really going to serve as a primer for those of us who are working on active transportation promotion in our communities. There's a lot out there, but we want to make sure that we're doing something specific for our statewide ATRC network. And then finally, we're at 11 o'clock. I want to wish everyone on the call, thank you for joining us, and definitely happy and healthy holiday season ahead. We are so grateful to be part of this network and so encouraged with all of the work you do. So on that note, this teleconference is coming to a close, and we will see all of you in 2022. All right, so take care, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.